afternoon. My name is Stephanie. I will be representing Group 1. We were discussing the pre-production and palm inputs challenges and opportunities. So the first topic of discussion was under the policy and regulations. The problems, the challenges that are faced are the borders are very porous. That means seeds, any type of seeds can get into the country. We have counterfeit pesticides and seeds, and farmers are not trained well enough to be able to confirm whether the seeds or the pesticides that they are using are actually allowed to be used or they are good. Or they are good. We have understaffing. For example, in Kenya, the Pest Control and Product Board only had about 8 personnel up until a few years ago. So you see, there is understaffing. They're not able to cover the entire region. Quality declared seeds in Kenya are rejected. They only want the standardized seeds. Then we need harmonization of policies in the region. The example that was used here is that farmers in Kenya could be using a specific type of pesticide that has been allowed. Farmers in Tanzania could be using a specific type of pesticide that has been banned in Kenya, and the one that has been certified in Kenya is like 4 or 5 times more expensive than the one that is in Tanzania. So farmers would go for the cheaper one, despite the fact that it has been banned in Kenya, and they are saying it's even more effective. And then under the capacity development in research and development, not enough people in research have been trained. It was mentioned that training was better done in the 80s and the 90s, but as of late, the training is wanting. There is no government funding for research. Researchers have to find their own funding, for example, from donors or development partners from the private sectors, which means the only country that actually has a limited budget is Ethiopia. The rest, that is Kenya and Uganda, do not have funding from the government to conduct research. Please, members from Group 1, feel free to add. Okay. Then the third topic is emergence of seed companies. There is a lack of trust from farmers for the new seeds, the seeds, especially the ones that are being produced locally. The farmers don't trust those seeds. They'll say that they don't germinate. They want the ones that look like they are imported. And farm input prices have gone up. We received input from a farmer representing Machakos. He says that since 2019, the prices of the farm inputs have been going up from 10,000 to 12,000, and now they're currently at 15,000, and yet the profit margins remain the same. So farmers are forced to make very difficult decisions. And then lastly, we spoke about the breeding and seed supply system. So the process of certification is very expensive and also very long, very time consuming. So most farmers will just go ahead and start production without following the regulations. And lastly, there is very high importation of vegetable seeds. Kenya imports over 1 million tons of vegetable and fruit seeds. Yeah, I think so. That was in 2012. Those are statistics from 2012. So you can imagine the situation now. But yeah, should there be any questions? Any questions? Anywhere anyone would require any clarification?
Thank you, Group 1. Those are key issues. However, I've noted one statement where you say that government does not fund. I would like to adjust, if you don't mind. Yes, government give us limited funding. is so limited that we cannot do what we want, but there is something that they give us. So I think, if you don't mind, that for the case of Uganda, it should be limited, but it's not enough.
Okay. So Uganda.
Okay, so there's some funding that government gives, but it is not.
That is the same situation in Ethiopia.
Yes.
There is a budget, but it's a limited budget for research.
Okay, so the same comment that she wanted to make. All right.
Very limited.
Okay, thank you. So your hand, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the pre-production and the farm inputs, you have mentioned the different challenges, which is okay. Then farm machinery is, in my view, ignored, because one of the inputs very important for farmers, particularly for small-scale farmers, is farm machinery implements. That's also a challenge in my view. The other thing is policy and regulation. It is not really unpacked. What do you mean when you say policy and regulations? This applies to all, actually. If we say policy and regulations, would be better if we a little bit unpack what policy and regulations.
All right, thank you. That's useful feedback. Whenever we talk about policy and regulation, let's as much as possible unpack. And the other issue is on inputs, farm inputs, machinery and equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more under also policies and regulations, and also related to breeding and introduction of new varieties, is that in most countries the release committee for new seeds is only basically meeting each other. In Ethiopia twice a year, in Uganda it's once a year, and in Kenya I don't know how many times they are seated. Twice. So that means that after testing new varieties, it can take very long before a new variety is actually being released to vegetable growers.
Thank you. Is there any other comment, or shall we bring that to a close? Okay, let's give a hand to Group 1. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you. And Daniel will help me by picking the flip chart presentation, the paper. As we invite Group 2 to now come on. Group 2, the group led by Dr. Joseph Njuguna. It's your time, it's your opportunity. Thank you. Again, remember you've got 5 minutes, and within the 5 minutes, you don't need to struggle to present everything, highlight on the key ones, but just know that your input is going to be useful as we do the conference documentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Group 2. Our main key points on production challenges and opportunities. We had some difficulty because there were quite many, and we had to categorize them between the small subsistence, the medium, and the large scale. But we ended up keeping it on the small subsistence on the farmer down there. And these are some of the challenges that we went with. First of all, the lack of capacity building and knowledge gaps in managing horticulture crops. So there was lack of capacity building and knowledge gaps in managing horticulture crops. Blanket recommendations on fertilizer applications, regardless of the region, due to poor soil mapping and inadequate data or soil types. Depleted soil fertility, poor quality agro inputs, pests and diseases, poor extension systems, agriculture not seen as a commercial venture mainly for subsistence, lack of database decision makings, inability to adapt to new production methods, lack of organic pesticide capacity and resources, disconnect between the research community and the production, inability of financial tools to help scale production up. Those were some of the challenges that we had. On to the opportunities. Improving local genotypes and commercializing them. Tapping into our natural resources, i.e. the forests, the rivers, the water, the land. Creation of and production of enabling policies that help our farmers. Cheap labor. Proximity of where the markets are. Commercialization of agriculture. Strengthening of farmer groups. And integration of different players in the value chain. Thank you.
Group 2, thank you very, very much. Let's move on to Group 3.
So my name is Penina. I'm presenting on behalf of Group 3. We are handling on post-harvest challenges and opportunities. Our moderator was Professor Jen. So I think since morning we all appreciate that post-harvest challenge is a key issue in the horticultural value chain because a lot is being produced, but I think statistics shows up to 50% or even 40% of what is produced goes to waste. So that means that that's an area that needs a lot of attention. So we tackled this by first identifying the challenges which are in the horticultural value chain and also the opportunities. So the first challenge which we identified was on poor harvesting practices, whereby you find that farmers don't know the right methods to harvest their produce, or they don't know the right stage to harvest, depending on the market. Should you harvest when it is ripe or unripe? Sometimes you find the harvest when it is unripe, and you find that compromises on the quality. And at times even you can't access the market. Your produce will not get to the market. They'll just be rejected because you harvested on the wrong maturity index when it was not ready. The other challenge is on poor transportation method. And you all agree that most of this production occurs in the rural areas, whereby you find that the road network is not good, it's bad, and that means they need to transport the produce from the rural areas where they have been produced, and most of the market is on the urban areas, so it's a long value chain. And because of that poor transportation, the roads are poor, you find that there is a lot of injuries on the produce, causing losses on the produce. And also you find that the kind of materials or means of transportation which farmers are using, especially the small-scale farmers, you find them they are using the motorcycles and all that. And as well during the transportation, how they package the produce. That also contributes to high post-harvest losses. On our third point was lack of access to capital. And actually all the members agreed that these cuts across, along the post-harvest, because you find that if you have capital, then you find farmers can invest on good transportation method, good storage facilities, and all that. So we identified that lack of storage or lack of access to capital is a major challenge, which leads to high post-harvest losses. Then on our fourth point was poor storage method. We all agree that, or we acknowledge that most of the horticultural produces are highly perishable. That means that from harvesting all along to consumption, we need to maintain or to store them in cold storage or to put them in low temperatures just to reduce the rate on which of perishability. However, you find that we don't have, or farmers don't have access to those cold storage for storing their produce or even other innovations to store their produce. So that becomes a major challenge. Another challenge we identified is on post-harvest pests and diseases. So you find that actually this starts from the farm, what you call the pre-harvest. So you find when the produce is still on the farm, if you don't do proper management, you find by the time you're harvesting, you carry pests and diseases to post-harvest, and most of the times you don't even see that. So during storage is when the pests, the post-harvest diseases start manifesting, and of course you can't sell your produce, and that becomes a major challenge. The other challenge was on poor marketing system. So you find that the marketing system is not well organized. Farmers are producing, they don't know where they're taking the produce, or at times they don't produce what the market needs. So you find that becomes a challenge, which leads to losses after harvesting. We also identified long horticultural value chain. As I earlier said, most of the production is being done in the rural areas, and that produce needs to be transported, which of course is long distance and all that. So by the time the produce gets to the market, you find it has already started losing its value. And the other challenge which we identified was the seasonality and dependence on rainfall. So most of the produce, or some of the horticultural produce, they are seasonal, meaning they are only available or they are produced during a certain period of the year. And during that period, like every farmer has a produce. For example, I can give an example of mango. In our country, Kenya, you find that from November up to February or late early March, we have a lot of mango in the market. Then there is that leads to a lot of wastage because the farmers are being given low prices for their produce. So then, because we identified the challenges, what are the opportunities which are there? What are the opportunities which then we can target to address these challenges? So one of the major opportunities which we identified as a group was capacity building, because you see that most of these challenges actually farmers don't know what to do or they don't have the knowledge. So the first opportunity was to invest on capacity building, whereby we train the farmers, we train the traders on how to tackle some of these challenges, like what I said on poor harvesting. They don't know the method of harvesting or even the right stage of harvesting their produce. Also, another opportunity is strengthening the linkages between farmers and researchers. And these ones, you all agree with me that there's a lot of research which is ongoing in most of the research organizations, like the universities and the like. But then you find, once we do our research, where does the information go? The information mostly stays on the paper. So it doesn't benefit the end user who is the farmer. So we need to strengthen the linkages between that. And actually the group members identified one of the solutions was like, we start first from the farmers, like we identify the problem, then now we come and research, so that by the time we are coming up with a solution, we are providing a solution which is, the farmers are willing, they are ready to adopt the technology. And also, still on that, another opportunity was we can even, like the training institutions, like the universities, they can, during the internship or attachment period, they can actually have the students go work with the farmers, then come research on the problems they found with the farmers. The other opportunity was in providing proper packaging solutions, of course, from harvesting, during transportation, and also during the marketing, so that you can reduce injuries on the produce, which is a major challenge of post-harvest losses. Another opportunity was on organizing farmers into groups, which of course that makes it easier to train the farmers, and also if for farmers it's easier even for them to access markets if they're in a group, and also even transportation, which you said is a major challenge. When they're in a group, they can actually identify a transportation means as a group. So they put their produce together, then they transport as a group. The other thing we identified as an opportunity was provision of cold storage services. So what did we mean by that? So as I said earlier, is that we need to maintain a cold storage chain, from what we usually say uninterrupted storage chain from harvesting up to the consumer. So we find that most of these farmers are small-scale farmers, so they don't have the capacity to have their own cold storage system. So actually investors can come on board. They have like facilities which you call service, whereby the traders can pay to store their storage. So they store for a while, then they pay for that service. So that can be a good opportunity. Also connecting farmers to market, especially the experts. You find that farmers, they produce, then there's like somebody is connecting them. So there's somebody who can get the produce from the farmers, then take it to the market. Of course, we're not talking about the middlemen who end up exploiting the farmers, but you can have like somebody who is connecting farmers to the market. So that helps in shortening the value chain. So I think we had several points, so I'll just highlight on 2 other points. The other one was on digitization, whereby farmers can actually upload their use technology to access market, whereby you have your produce, you upload it on either on your phones or in wherever on the social medias, that then you are able to, people will see your produce, we can pay, then even organize for delivery. So that even also shortens the value chain. We also talked about value addition, especially by the small-scale farmers, whereby we encourage small-scale processors. Remember I said that farmers can be organized into groups. So in those groups, actually, farmers can start processing, and I'm sure you have seen some of the things, like the exhibition from the University of Nairobi. There are some products which have been processed. So you find that farmers can be trained on how to process those produce, and then they can sell. However, when we are discussing that, we also identified another challenge whereby you find, like us, the consumers, we are not like ready to consume products which have been produced by the small-scale farmers. So actually we identified another opportunity where we can have policies which are promoting consumption of produce which have been produced or they have been locally processed by farmers, and also help in promoting those local products. We actually identified an opportunity or an example of what is being done in our country. Like actually in schools, we process the juice, we can even be providing to schools. Of course, we partner with the county government and then they pay us and all that. So I think we had a lot, but I've tried to summarize on what we discussed, unless I've missed something the group members can add. Thank you.
Let's appreciate group 3. Any comments, any questions? Additions?
Thank you so much for your nice presentation. But I have a question on, I think, on number 8, seasonality dependence on rainfall. What does it mean? As per your explanation, I understand that there is ample amount of production at the same time. But what is the root cause of this problem? I think, in my opinion, there is a lack of awareness how to produce the horticultural communities. And this is due to limited extension service, I think. And also, it should be related to market linkage. So, in my opinion, you have to include also these issues. And also, you missed about the post-harvest value addition issues. We have to encourage our farmers in how to package their produces, and also we have to encourage also semi-processing issues. We also to encourage also processing issues. So this is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see a group member is volunteering to answer the question on that.
Yes, thank you very much. I will comment on the question you have brought on. Yeah, what we are meaning by off-season production, because relying seasonality and dependence on rainfall, because you realize most times during the season there is excessive production and there is a gap in processing. Yeah, but we link that up, only that it was not brought out clearly. Most of the small-scale growers are picking up on majorly using solar dryers to process and add value to those produces, so that there are minimal losses during times of plenty. I don't know if that addresses your question and concern. Are you fine?
He will not be fine.
Okay.
The conversation continues. Right. Any other comment, view? Right.
think one other thing that Penina missed out a little is the opportunities in value addition for youth. Yeah, value addition and even storage. We said that cold storage is expensive, but what we're seeing emerging is youth actually, those who don't want to engage in the upstream in the farm, can actually take up these services downstream, like owning a cold room and providing a service to traders or to farmers. Yeah, so this is, in fact, we're looking at that. That is something that is really being explored big time in Kenya, that the farmers don't have to own some of the facilities, but there are people who can. I don't know if any of you have read about cold hubs in Nigeria. I think it has really, yeah, so they're actually at the market level, even at the farm level, giving that service to traders or to farmers. And we're seeing that as a big opportunity for youth.
Excellent. Good point. I think that's something to note. I saw her hand here.
Mine is just to add on the second opportunity, the strengthening of linkages between farmers and researchers. I believe researchers are very few. They cannot reach all farmers. So the best way is to empower the extension officer so that the extension officer always has the correct information up to date so that he can always get to the farmer, so that we leave the researchers to continue doing research.
So researchers to continue doing the work, but extension officers. Now, I should not be adding on to this, but when we grew up, there are very many agricultural research extension officers. They are called that. Agriculture, research, and extension officers. Now, are they still there?
Yes, they are.
Oh, I see. Are they still there?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll be available in case of further discussion. Thank you.
Now, are they still there?
Yes, they are.
Oh, I see. Are they still there?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll be available in case of further discussion. Thank you.
All right, let's give them a hand. I think group 3 have done it. We now go to group 4.
It was very pleasant to have a discussion with my group about infrastructure and logistics. And since infrastructure and logistics is often a big cause, or the lack of quality of infrastructure and logistics, often a big cause of post-harvest losses, we have a lot of overlap with the previous team. So they kind of stole my thunder, but I'll still try to tell you what we discussed. So we first had a look at what is the current supply chain for fruits and vegetables in Kenya and Ethiopia mainly, since we didn't have anybody from Uganda in our team. But we quickly concluded that there is such a wide variety in different crops, different channels, that it's difficult to generalize as well, but still we gave it a try. So the crops, the value chain from farmer via the marketing agents to a wholesaler, retailer, and then eventually to the consumer. And within all these different steps, there are transportation methods. So from farmer to market, it's often to the marketing agent, it's often being done by wheelbarrows, donkeys, horses, motorcycles. From marketing agent to the wholesaler in pickup trucks, buses, and then eventually from the retailer or wholesaler to the consumer, being done by car, walking, bicycles, and things like that. And we discussed what are then the issues that are along this supply chain. So since we're talking about transport and logistics, we're talking about supply chains instead of value chains this time. We started with, in general, for every single step in the supply chain, there are bad roads, often, especially in the beginning when the feeder roads from the farm towards the marketing agents, those are in bad conditions, and therefore you need basic transportation methods. We talked about there's a push instead of a pool system. So farmers are producing but not getting enough, not especially delivering what the end consumer might want. We kind of considered the shortages and therefore price fluctuations also being a distribution issue instead of only a scarcity issue. So there is production in a certain area, there is scarcity in a certain area, but at the moment these two places do not meet in the middle yet. The marketing agents, we consider them as a necessary evil. There's a huge price difference from the farmer to the wholesaler or retailer, but there's also huge transaction costs since a lot of the risk is being bared by the marketing agents. So yes, they charge higher fees, they make the price higher, but they also bear the majority of the risk in the chain as well. So when it comes down to the transportation methods at the moment, they also lead to high post-harvest losses. They also lead to possible contamination. So if we transport them in buses, leafy vegetables, they're often being transported along with people, along with other commodities. Transportation with trucks out in the open sun with all the dust coming in leads to high post-harvest losses. And when we take a look at the wholesale and retail structure, the infrastructure, we see that especially in Kenya that the wholesalers and retailers are often based on the same grounds. So the general idea before was that wholesalers and retailers would have their own marketplaces, but currently it's common that the retailers are having their produce, their commodities being sold right in front of the wholesalers. And that's also more a political item. There's a lot of work being done in the counties here in Kenya, and they also benefit from the situation that's currently there, so they don't have an incentive to change the current situation. And we also indeed, as mentioned before, packaging is a huge issue, and packaging is one of the, with proper packaging, the losses during the transportation will be a lot less. And when we take a look at the opportunities, so we have a lot of challenges that are shared within the countries, If we take a look at the opportunities, I think the key takeaway for us was that when we do capacity building, we do not need to focus only and mainly on the farmers. The farmers are currently often the subject of a lot of help, but we need to have a look at the entire chain. So also take a look at the transporters, the marketing agents. What can they do to improve the situation? And when it comes down to investments in infrastructure, so storage facilities, cold storage facilities, aggregation centers, it's also good to focus not only on setting it up, but also trying to create a good organization around it. Because what we see happening with projects that they put up a building, but then eventually, as soon as the project leaves, the building is not being used anymore, since people are debating on who should be responsible for it. When it comes down to transportation of fresh fruits and vegetables, there also should be more regulations in place. So should vegetables be allowed to be transported along with other commodities or chickens, for instance? To address the issue on the distribution issue, not the scarcity issue, a transparent and clear marketing information system could give farmers and the wholesalers, retailers, and marketing a good idea on where we'd like to have the produce and where is it available. And eventually also the political side, we need to have the responsibilities of the county very clear. They need to get incentives to arrange their market infrastructure in a good and proper way. That's especially the case for Kenya. And I hope I'm within 5 minutes now. Yes, score. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm raising the issue of market agents or brokers,
Yep.
which are part of the supply value chain, actually. But this area is negatively perceived in Ethiopia and many
Also in
people-
Kenya.
Also in Kenya. So what should happen to that? Because if it is, can we totally exclude these market agents? Is there any possibility? So why it is negatively perceived, if you have any?
Yeah, so we discussed that, and the reason why they're negatively perceived is because there's such a huge price difference between what the farmer is getting and for what they're selling it to a wholesaler or a retailer. And they often, well, people might see that as them being getting all the money within and just trying to rip off the farmers as well. But as we said, we call them necessary evils since they are facilitating a lot of the of the whole supply from the farmer towards the wholesaler. The brokering agent, the brokers, marketing agents, they're picking up the produce from the farms. The farmers are they're focusing on farming and do not want to get the whole transportation arranged. They do not even have the resources even often to get a proper transportation. The brokers are buying it in bulk from the farmer, often without even grading or rating what they are buying. So they are the bearer of the majority of the risk, and therefore they should be compensated. And therefore I do think they are very valuable throughout the whole chain. And that the negative perception is not always, not always right. Yeah.
Mine is just to add to our group, number 4. What the government of Kenya is doing on the marketing agents, the brokers, is for the horticulture. Through the Agriculture and Food Authority that I work in, we are registering them, trying to regulate them. We put rules and regulations so that they don't just operate the way they want. So like if you get the ones who deal with the fruits and vegetables and flowers, they even have numbers. They're registered with a number, and every year they have to renew their registration. And we also hold some capacity building just to tell them how they need to operate in this business. And currently we are actually enlightening them on the new regulations that the government released last year, the Horticulture Regulations 2020. So we are hoping a day at a time, a step one at a time.
Okay.
Kasbekas.
Encouraging report.
This is a question just brought up off of that conversation right there of the distrust and the relationship challenges between the brokers and wholesalers and the producers. So it's not as much infrastructure, but it is partial, and that is producers' access to price information. And that's where a lot of that breakdown happens, and that distrust is not really understanding or having access to the prices. Is there any infrastructure about sharing price information in any of our 3 countries?
I think so. We discussed indeed what type of information system is available. I know in Ethiopia, they're currently, with the Agricultural Transformation Institute, they're building a price information system for fruits and vegetables, but it's currently only focusing on cereal crops. Kenya already had a very elaborate system with a day-to-day market-per-market information for fruits and vegetables, but currently they have a less elaborate text, SMS text system. So it is there, but it's not that elaborate. And on the other hand, you have a lot of information on pricing levels in all the different social media that are currently present. But then it's always difficult to verify whether the information is correct and whether it's whether it really represents the actual prices. So I think they are there, but they're still quite limited.
All right. Any other comment, question? All right. I think that's it for now. Thank you very much, Group 4. Let's give them a hand. now we go to group 5.
Hi, everybody. My name is Edna, and our question was entrepreneurship challenges and opportunities, youth, women empowerment in horticulture. It took us a while to demystify this question, I must confess. So we had to try and break it out. And we looked at the target audience as women and youth. So the target audience was women and youth. And the other point we picked out was entrepreneurship, which meant starting a business in the horticulture sector. Then we also looked at the word empowerment, which meant capacitating, challenges and opportunities involved in capacitating. So we started off with looking at the challenges that this group faces, the women and youth. And one of the challenges was lack of skills and knowledge in the sector, in the horticulture sector. I think that is self-explanatory. Most youth and women would love to venture into the agriculture sector, but they lack the knowledge and the skills. Then we also looked at, I'm trying to rush through here because I know we have less time. We also looked at lack of job creation skills. We also looked at lack of knowledge to add value to whatever they have ventured in. Then we also looked at lack of appreciation of agriculture as a viable business. Government was not involving youth enough to appreciate horticulture. So we also looked at discrimination on jobs, because most times there's preference of adult men than women and young youth. We also saw that youth don't appreciate the dirty work of growing, planting, and making their hands green. They prefer the trading bit or transportation, unlike their female counterparts. We also looked at the market being dominated by the bigger fish. So for the small-scale farmers, the youth who get involved, it's a little bit of a challenge for them to penetrate into the market. There was also the point on policies that are in place that do not favor these farmers, because most of the small-scale farmers cannot access whatever rules and regulations are put into place for them to access things like grants or loans. So most of them are not able to reach those opportunities that are in place. Most of the production also is done by small-scale farmers. This was a point that was tackled. Most of the production is done by small-scale farmers, and yet the production is done on small sizes of land. But these small-scale farmers are producing, I think, the bigger percentage of what is being consumed on the market, and the sizes of the land is still dwindling. So making it a little bit difficult for them to remain in the business. So we have a bit of rural-urban migration. But on the other positive side, we saw that the women who remain back get an opportunity to be employed, to remain employed on the farms, on the small farms. And the reason the farms were dwindling was because of cultural issues. Most of the land is being subdivided. I think that was a point in Kenya from the Kenyan counterparts. We also saw something about youth perseverance in the agriculture sector. Once they take into or try out agriculture, and it doesn't work out the first time or the second time, they normally give up. That was a problem because to encourage them to come back into the sector would be such a challenge. So that was a challenge. And then we looked at the opportunities and recommendations. We say that we try and ask the stakeholders or the governments involved to make horticulture an attractive, lucrative business. Youth should be also merged into sectors that they like, because like we talked earlier on, they don't like making their hands green or dirty. So maybe they could, somebody was talking earlier on here about the youth being, or the middleman being, but I think the middleman, most of them would be youth also, at least that is my experience in Uganda. Most of the people who buy from us to resell are youth. So getting rid of that sector is a little bit difficult, because at the same time they are being employed, and it is also helping on the value chain. So the other issue we talked about on the opportunities and recommendations was agricultural value products have very quick turnover. Goods that have a short growth span, e.g. like herbs, greens, lettuces should be picked out or should be taken upon. That would encourage the youth who don't have the perseverance maybe to be encouraged to do agriculture because of the fast returns on the products, because they take a short lifespan. Sorry. There was also an opportunity on the fair trade, where we say that some youth are encouraged. This was a Kenyan contribution. They are encouraged to invest into farming, like into the avocado sector, and then it takes a while for them to start seeing the returns. And when the returns start coming in, they are peanuts. As much as there is an opportunity for them to market their produce, the returns they receive. So we are saying that at least the stakeholders and government should lobby for better prices here, as much as there is an opportunity for the youth in that sector. Then there was another point we talked about: small farm holdings. Small farm holdings there should be a supplement to irrigation to these farmers to supply all year, because most of the produce is coming from these people. If there could be some kind of, they are willing to produce, but they don't have the innovation for them to continue producing throughout the year. So they are keen on the production, but they lack the innovations involved to help them consistently produce. Then we looked at labor opportunity of the youth. They are young and strong, and that is something that can be explored and taken advantage of as an opportunity. And also the other opportunity we said is the youth are willing to get involved as long as they can feel ownership of this project. So involving the youth would mean that you give them some kind of stake so that they can feel proud to own their own kind of thing. The other opportunities we saw were the government policies that are in place. A case in discussion here was Uganda. We have so many policies the government has undertaken to involve the youth. And as much as the policies are in place, little is being done on horticulture. most of the youth are being encouraged to do welding or carpentry or piggery. So yeah, the government policies are in place, but the implementation on the horticulture sector is a little bit lacking. Then there was another one of availability of capital and loans. This was from, I think it was from Kenya. The loans are available, but the loan amounts being given to these groups are so minimal, and yet the groups are too big. So it doesn't really make sense for people to go in for these loans, and they don't make anything out of it. Then there was the land availability. The land availability, I think government has policies in Uganda for some youth to take on some projects and apply for some land to do. But most of the land, most people going for upland rice, forestry. So the gap is there, but how to implement it into horticulture is the biggest problem. My group, if there's anything I've left out, please.
All right. Yes, let's combine any comments from the group as well as any questions or additional comments that come. Anybody?
Thank you. I just want to add some pointers. When you see the entrepreneurship on horticulture, it needs knowledge and skill. So the traditional way of our farming is a problem, and we have to modernize so as to attract users, especially. So in this case, there is a lack of attention by the government, and also lack of finance, so as to undertake to fill the gap on knowledge and skill in this case. When you see the availability of loan, it might be different from country to country, but it is limited. But when you see the horticulture sector, it demands high initial capital, but its return is very high. But at initial stage, it demands capital. So maybe the government should have its own strategy on this aspect. As per the land availability, I think the land tenure system of our country is different from Kenya and Uganda, I think. In that aspect, this also demands a strategy how to include into youth and women's strategy and policy. So this is what I have to add on, but most of the points are mentioned by your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Those are additional points. Okay, one hand here. As we draw to the end.
Group 5, thanks for your presentation. I'm always excited when I see this thing, power, empowerment. If we're really to help the horticulture sector in terms of empowering the youth and the women, we need to clearly define the concept of power. In agriculture generally, power, it's normally related to prices. If you're powerful, then you have the ability to make someone do something that he or she even would not be willing to do. If you're powerful, you'll make someone take a low price. For you to do that, you need to have the tools of power. And we've been talking about these tools, things like land, having capital, having the knowledge, possessing the processing equipment. Something normally people forget about is ownership of the market space. It's linked to the previous discussion where we're talking about prices of produce. If we want to empower the women and the youth, we need to find a way of them owning the market space. If you own the market space, you can determine the price. In the horticulture sector, there are challenges at the market where there are cartels. You can have your very nice looking produce, you bring it to the market. These cartels will block you off. They'll keep tossing you around until about 3 p.m. when your produce is now declining in quality. Then they say, okay, we are giving you this price. And then you cannot take your produce back. You simply give in. So this is it's something we need to think about. I'm also going to just comment on capital. There is something that the Uganda government is doing indirectly. It is bringing the capital to the small grower, and they're approaching it through the parish. They say, we've been doing a lot for the agriculture sector, but we see no changes in the agriculture sector. Over the years, we've been investing in agriculture, but the farmer's situation never changes. So they saw something called elite capture. So indirectly, they are trying to bypass the elite, and they're sending money direct to the grower or the farmer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting. Bypassing the elite. Okay. One final one, and then we will be able to move on.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Group 5. It's been very enlightening. I just want to put an addition. Since morning we've been talking about getting the vulnerable ones and the youth involved in horticulture. This is a question to all of us. We say horticulture is a viable venture, it's profitable. But how come these young people, in the case of Uganda, they prefer to go to the border enterprise, and they don't go in this so-called viable, profitable venture? So there is a missing link there. If it's really profitable, why are they not going there? A few who go there, they drop off, especially depending on the market forces. If there is a harvest, a bumper harvest, and they lose, they jump out. Probably we need to think about a model. What model are we going to use to show that this horticulture we are talking about is commercially viable and sustainable, so that it's attractive enough for these young people to come? I'm just throwing it for discussion. What model can we use to say that actually is commercially viable, sustainable, and if this young man remains there, he will not go back to the border business?
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have seen something happening in Kenya. People moving from planting their maize and their beans to planting something called muguka. Maybe somebody can translate that for me. Please proceed. Respond to those issues, and then we move on. Thank you.
I thought it was an addition. Let me just comment a little bit on that. I think we already commented about the youth being very impatient. Most of the male youth who are on the borders don't have the patience to see through the ups and downs in farming. For them, they expect returns tomorrow. Kagwirawo. I think we have to involve them and talk to them and counsel them and tell them this is life. There are ups and downs, but you pick yourself up and go on. So I think it is just an attitude issue. It is because the ladies persevere. When you look at it, it is the ladies who continue putting food on the table, taking their baskets to the streets to sell those vegetables, sitting at the market stalls. So I think it is just an attitude issue with the youth that has to be maybe, somebody has to cancel them.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give Group 5 an hand of appreciation. Thank you. We are coming towards the end of the day. We have got one more session to close.